It's December 24, 2002, at 8 a.m. in Modesto, California, and a desperate call comes in from Scott and Laci Peterson's home on California Avenue. Their young son, Connor, is screaming in the background, but Laci is nowhere to be found. The frantic Scott Peterson explains that his pregnant wife went out for a walk early that morning and never returned. The call sets off a massive search effort that will last for months. The streets around their home are bustling with police cars and volunteers, all searching for any sign of Laci. As we recreate the scene of Laci's disappearance, we're surrounded by the quiet, suburban streets of Modesto. The Petersons' home, a modest two-story house with a white picket fence, seems almost idyllic, but it's now a crime scene. The police have cordoned off the area, and neighbors are standing around, whispering to each other, as they try to make sense of the events unfolding before their eyes. The sun is shining, casting long shadows across the pavement, and a gentle breeze stirs the leaves of the trees. It's a typical Christmas morning, but one that will be forever marred by tragedy. Laci Peterson, a 27-year-old pregnant woman, is the center of attention. She's 8 months pregnant, with a baby bump that's starting to show. According to her husband, Scott, she was a happy and vibrant person, loving mother-to-be. She was due to give birth to their first child, Connor, just a few weeks later. As we imagine her walking out of the house that fateful morning, she's probably unaware of the horror that awaits her. Her smile would light up the morning, but it's a smile that will be forever silenced. Neighbors and witnesses report hearing strange noises and seeing suspicious activity around the Peterson home in the days leading up to Laci's disappearance. Some claim to have seen a man lurking around the neighborhood, while others heard the sound of a car driving away from the house in the early hours of that morning. The witnesses' accounts will vary, but one thing is certain: something was amiss in the Peterson household. The police will investigate every lead, but it will take months to unravel the web of deceit and lies that surrounded Scott Peterson. As the search party continues to scour the town, the community is left gripped with fear and uncertainty. Here's the written content for the background chapter of the video about the murder of Laci Peterson. At the center of this case is Laci Peterson, a 27-year-old woman who lived in Modesto, California with her husband, Scott, and their unborn son. Laci was 8 months pregnant when her life tragically ended. She was a devoted mother-to-be, looking forward to meeting her child, whom she and Scott had planned to name Connor. The couple had been married for 5 years and seemed to have a happy family life. They were expecting the arrival of their first child, a boy, which brought them even closer together. Laci worked part-time as a dental assistant at a local dental office, where she was well-liked by her colleagues and patients. She was a kind and caring person who loved her family dearly. Laci's love for children was evident in the way she prepared for her unborn baby's arrival, setting up a nursery and picking out all the necessary baby supplies. Her family and friends described her as a sweet and gentle soul who never spoke a bad word about anyone. On the surface, Laci's life seemed perfect, but beneath the surface, there were secrets and tensions brewing. Many people found Laci relatable and sympathetic because of her wholesome image and loving nature. She was a devoted daughter and sister, and her family always came first. Laci's love for her mother was especially strong, and she often spoke about how much she admired her. Her mother, Sharon, was a constant presence in Laci's life, and the two were known to be extremely close. Laci's kindness and generosity towards others made her a beloved figure in her community. Laci had a close-knit group of friends and family members whom she trusted with her life. Her husband, Scott, was at the top of that list, but as we will discover, not everyone in Laci's life was as trustworthy as they seemed. In the months leading up to her disappearance, Laci had been going through a difficult time, struggling with her marriage and feeling increasingly isolated. She had been feeling trapped in her relationship with Scott, who she felt was becoming increasingly distant and controlling. Little did anyone know, these tensions would eventually lead to a devastating turn of events that would change everything forever. But what led Laci's world to come crashing down around her? On December 24, 2002, at around 8:15 in the morning, 27-year-old Laci Denise Peterson disappeared from her home in Modesto, California. The weather that day was typical of the Central Valley region in California, with a clear blue sky and mild temperatures ranging from the mid-50s to mid-60s Fahrenheit. Laci's husband, Scott Lee Peterson, reported her missing that day after he went to the nearby park to jog. When Scott returned home, Laci was nowhere to be found, and her dog was still inside the house. The only unusual thing Scott noticed was that Laci's keys, phone, and other personal belongings were still on the kitchen counter. As it turns out, Scott and Laci had planned to spend Christmas Day together that year, and they had even discussed decorating their home and attending a holiday dinner with friends. In the days leading up to her disappearance, Laci and Scott had also discussed their plans for the upcoming arrival of their unborn son, Connor. Laci was 8 months pregnant at the time and was eagerly expecting their first child. The couple had been married for 4 years and had seemed to have a loving relationship. However, some neighbors reported hearing arguments between Scott and Laci in the past, but these incidents seemed to be minor and not uncommon for newlyweds. The day Laci disappeared, Scott took his boat out on the San Francisco Bay and claimed he was fishing, but he failed to file a boating report that day. It was later discovered that Scott had actually been visiting his mistress, Amber Fry, in Fresno, California. Meanwhile, Laci's family and friends began searching for her, and her mother, Sharon, reported her missing to the police. Laci's friends told the investigators that she would never leave her dog behind, and this fact raised suspicions about Scott's involvement in her disappearance. As the search for Laci and her unborn child continued, investigators found a suspicious note on Laci's kitchen counter that read, "I'm sorry," which seemed to point to a possible motive for her disappearance. One of the most disturbing and shocking details about Laci's disappearance is that her unborn son, Connor, was found to have a missing umbilical cord, which suggested that he had been born alive before being killed. This gruesome fact was confirmed during the autopsy, and investigators found that Laci and Connor's remains had been weighted down in the San Francisco Bay with rocks and a concrete block, indicating that someone had deliberately tried to prevent their bodies from washing ashore. As the evidence against Scott continued to mount, he became the prime suspect in the case, and his alibi for the time Laci disappeared began to unravel. The evidence against Scott would eventually lead to his arrest and a lengthy trial for the murder of his pregnant wife and unborn son. As the news of Laci Peterson's disappearance spread, the Modesto Police Department quickly swung into action. They began canvassing the neighborhood, searching for any signs of Laci or her unborn child. On December 26, 2002, the police released a statement asking the public for information and offering a $10,000 reward for any information leading to Laci's safe return. As the investigation continued, police focused on interviewing Laci's husband, Scott, and their friends and family. They reviewed hours of security footage and interviewed anyone who may have seen or spoken to Laci in the days leading up to her disappearance. The police investigation continued for weeks, with no leads or signs of Laci's whereabouts. But it wasn't until a key piece of evidence was discovered that the case took a major turn. On February 18, 2003, police found a mysterious piece of rope near the shore of San Francisco Bay, which would later be linked to Scott Peterson's alibi. The rope was a crucial piece of evidence, as it suggested that someone may have been trying to cover their tracks. This discovery marked a significant shift in the investigation, as police began to look at Scott as a potential suspect. As the investigation continued, the police looked at several people as potential suspects, including Laci's friends and family members. But the main focus was on Scott Peterson, who had become increasingly nervous during interviews. Scott's friends and acquaintances also began to come under scrutiny, with some of them revealing that he had been acting strangely in the days leading up to Laci's disappearance. The police also began to investigate a possible affair between Scott and a woman named Amber Fry, who would later become a key witness in the case. Scott's increasingly erratic behavior made him a prime suspect in the eyes of the police. One of the biggest mistakes investigators made was focusing on a suspect who turned out to be a red herring. In the early stages of the investigation, police focused on a man named Gary Pratt, who was a friend of Laci's. Pratt was a 30-year-old man with a history of petty crimes, and police thought he may have had a motive to kill Laci. But as the investigation continued, police realized that Pratt was not connected to the case, and he was eventually ruled out as a suspect. The investigation wasted months of time and resources on Pratt, which ultimately delayed the discovery of the truth. The twist or revelation nobody predicted is what led to the downfall of Scott Peterson's seemingly perfect life. Laci Peterson's husband was not who he claimed to be. Scott Peterson had a secret life, one that included numerous affairs with multiple women, one of whom was a 24-year-old woman named Amber Fry. His relationship with Amber was intense, and they had been planning a future together. However, their whirlwind romance was cut short when Scott was arrested and charged with Laci's murder. As detectives dug deeper into Scott's past, they discovered more evidence of his infidelity and deception. He had also been in contact with several other women while he was married to Laci, including a woman he met while golfing who eventually became a witness in his trial. Scott's multiple affairs raised questions about his character and whether he was capable of such heinous crimes. The details of his secret life became a major part of the prosecution's case against him. In the end, it was this evidence that helped convince the jury of his guilt. In 2004, Scott Peterson was convicted of the first-degree murder of Laci and the second-degree murder of Connor. His trial was a highly publicized and dramatic case that captivated the nation. Scott was sentenced to death, but his death sentence was later overturned in 2020. He was resentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole in 2021. Despite the guilty verdict, many people still question whether Scott committed the crime or was the victim of circumstantial evidence. So what happened to the key people after the trial? Laci's family, including her mother Sharon and brother Brent, have become advocates for victims' rights and have spoken out about the importance of supporting families during times of crisis. Amber Fry, the woman who was involved with Scott during the time of his marriage, has also spoken publicly about her experience. She has said that she was devastated by Scott's crimes and has worked to raise awareness about the dangers of abusive relationships. Laci's friends and family continue to remember her as a loving and dedicated mother-to-be. The case has also had a significant impact on the community, highlighting the importance of looking out for vulnerable women and children.